Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com, back with episode 44 of the Humble Mechanic podcast. And it is freezing in the garage today, so I'm all bundled up and trying to stay warm. I feel stupid complaining about how cold it is when Boston's under like 1,000,000 feet of snow or something like that. But anyway, today I'm going to be taking your questions that you've sent to me via email to charles@humblemechanic.com, and you put question for Charles in the subject. Before we get rolling into the show, quick shout out to the folks at PowerProbe. You may remember I did a review of the PowerProbe, I don't know, a week or two ago. And well, they got wind of the review, they liked it, and they sent me a bunch of cool stuff. So check them out, powerprobe.com. They also have a ton of really awesome videos on YouTube. So I'll put a link to both of those in the show notes for you guys. They actually had a surprising amount of DIY and diagnostic videos that I never really realized. So check those out. Really cool, bunch of awesome folks over there. Thank you guys at PowerProbe very much for hooking it up. All right, let's get into the questions. First one comes from Joey. He's got a question about free work. He wants to know how it affects the bill for a technician when service advisors shave 10 or 15% off, or if they have a coupon. It generally doesn't. Usually that comes off the labor rate or parts, which it would affect the parts department. It would also affect probably the service manager, but it doesn't generally affect the technicians since we're paid on the hours, not the dollars. Some of the other service folks are paid on the dollars, and that would affect them. And usually there's limits to that stuff. So if you had a 10% off coupon and your bill was $5,000, they probably wouldn't knock $500 off, or they would knock $500 total off. Some would come from parts, some would come from labor. It all really depends. But that stuff doesn't really affect the technicians. But if it were a parts coupon, that would probably affect the parts guys. Next up, Billy asks, he's got a 2000 VR6 Jetta that has a lag in the throttle. Looks like all kinds of stuff going on. Timing chain noise, running rough at about 1300 to 1800 RPM. The engine shakes. Okay, since you have a 2000, you really need to get a way to monitor some scan tool information. We need to know, is the car misfiring or is it shaking and not misfiring, not counting misfires? All that's going to be really important. Honestly, depending on how bad that timing chain issue is, that can be causing all of it. You really need to write down everything that's happening, and we really do need to start with a scan tool. Now, I'm not the type of person that's, you can only fix this with a scan tool, but we need to start somewhere, and the scan tool is going to give us so much good information that we're going to be able to make our diagnosis a little bit faster or a little bit easier without swapping parts or doing a bunch of maybe unnecessary testing. So before you do anything though, I would run through and make sure all your vacuum lines are good, all your spark plug wires are plugged in properly, your throttle body's not dirty, and if that timing chain is really bouncing around, that can cause a lot of this issue. So you may need to get that straightened out first. That's a pretty big job, a pretty expensive job. For most people, it's not a DIY at home to replace the timing chains. The transmission does need to come out of the vehicle. So, I don't know. Try and get a scan tool, borrow VAGCOM, hell, buy VAGCOM. It's worth it. It's like $350, especially if you already have a laptop. I bought mine years ago. I think I've went through 3 laptops with it and still the same cable and the same software. So you got to start there, man. That's the best place to start. And, if you want to update, let me know what's going on after that. We can go from there. All right, next, Tim asks, he's got a 1985 VW Transporter crew cab with a 2.0 8 valve in it from Mark III Golf. So that would be like an ABA engine, which is really awesome. Sometimes on acceleration, the engine seems to hold power back, and when he comes to a standstill, it dies. Normal driving is fine, maybe the fuel pressure regulator. Check and see if your fuel pressure regulator is holding vacuum. It probably is. I've replaced exactly 0 fuel pressure regulators on Volkswagens, but depending on where you got that engine from, maybe it sat in the junkyard for a year. So easy, quick check. He does have a fuel pump, and he's getting proper fuel pump pressure. So start with the basics: spark plugs, cap, rotor, wires, ignition coil. Usually ignition coils cause a no start issue on that engine. Make sure all your grounds are good. Depending on what year the engine is from, you may have the ECM looking for something that it's not seeing. If it's holding power back, make sure your exhaust isn't clogged up a little bit. Those are just some basic ones. You know, it's tough to say when you get into engine swaps and what could be the problem, you know, what can't be the problem. You know, what would normally be the problem if this were a Mark III Golf with that engine in it might be very different from what the problem could be when the engine's in a transporter, so, or any other engine swap for that matter. So like I said to the last question, start with the basics, start with your maintenance stuff, make sure all that's straightened out. If it's an intermittent issue, you know, it can get a little trickier. Make sure your grounds are good and go from there. But I would probably start with spark plugs, cap, rotor button, if that stuff wasn't replaced on the swap. That's a really common thing on those ABA engines. Cool setup though, Tim. Hey, if you got a picture of it, post it on the Facebook page. I want to see it. All right, next up, Jesse asks, he's a Toyota tech, and he wanted to know if I knew of any forums for techs. There's a few forums out there that I've stumbled upon. I don't really know of any that are specifically automotive technician driven. I know there's like a Volkswagen one for Volkswagen techs. But just as like an industry, I don't know. There's a couple of good forums like Garage Journal. Really cool forum, ton of great information about, you know, garage remodels and stuff. A lot of really cool stuff that guys post. But as far as technicians, I don't know. He also wanted to know if I'd ever considered doing something like that. I tried to do a forum very early on in the blog, probably too early looking back on it. It was a ton of work, like so much more work than I expected it to be. So, you know, if any of you guys are out there that are interested in helping me do that, I'm more than willing to do it, but it's not something that I can do and I can run along with all the other stuff. So, if you want to help me out, shoot me an email, charles@humblemechanic.com, put forum in the subject and let me know your thoughts. And if we can kind of work together and fire that up, I'll be more than happy to do it. All right, next up we got a question from Kevin. He's got a 2000 Passat, and every time he turns the headlights on, there's a beeping noise that'll go off for 1 to 2 straight seconds or minutes. I think I cut some of his email off. Sorry about that, Kevin. All right, so we need to see what's happening. When we turn the lights on, what's going on? Obviously, our lights are coming on throughout the car. This car has daytime running lights, so the headlights are already on, but it's turning the rest of the lights on in the car. In addition to that, it's turning on all the lights on the inside of the car. So it's lighting the cluster differently, it's lighting the radio, it's lighting the HVAC controls, it's lighting the lights in the doors. And on some of those, it might be lighting the indicators on the vents. We need to really analyze what the beep is though. Is it the same beep that happens when you leave the lights on and take the key out of the ignition and open the door? Is it the door ajar beep? We need to really understand what noise this is making. We need to really understand what else would cause this exact same noise. And then we can look at and see what the car's seeing when that happens. I have seen some really weird stuff happen with the lights and the doors. I've seen a lot of door latch failures, so maybe it's the car's not seeing the door shut all the way, and it's just mentioning it to you when you turn the lights on. The other one I've seen that's really weird in this vein is a failed fuel pump relay. So on this vehicle, when you open the door, the car primes the fuel pump so that it doesn't have to crank as long. And in order to do that, the door basically sends a signal to this fuel pump relay to say, hey, turn the fuel pump on for a second. Fuel pump turns on, now there's pressure in the fuel rail. Well, I've seen those fail in a really weird way where, like, I think the last one that was really strange was customer would be driving down the road and the car would just start beeping. Very similar to yours. I don't really remember if it was when they turned the lights on or not, but again, it was a pretty similar situation. The way I think we found it was kind of by accident. I don't think there was any fault stored in any system. I think it was just pure dumb luck. And this was years ago that we had found it. I actually have it in my toolbox still with a piece of yellow tape around it because it's one of those parts you keep because it failed in such a weird way that it'll be a good prank to play on the new guy. So start off by trying to find a way to duplicate the exact noise when it's not you turning the lights on, and then we can go from there. You know, part of the problem with a lot of this diagnosis is you just have to try stuff. What else can I do? What makes it do it? What doesn't make it do it? What other parameters is this situation happening? And then we can sort of narrow it down from there. So keep us posted, Kevin, because that's an odd one that I'd love to know the answer. The other thing is on that one, actually, it's super easy to swap a headlight switch out of another car. So if you have another Volkswagen floating around near you, just pop the headlight switches out and swap them and see if it does it with a different headlight switch. That's probably the easiest thing. Honestly, at the dealership, that's where I would start, because it would take, 3 seconds to pull a headlight switch out of another car and install it. So along the kind of weird electrical things, Sean has a car that won't start, keys in the ignition, but dash doesn't light up and car won't start. This is another one where we really need to look at the entire situation. Is it that I'm putting the key in the ignition and I'm turning it and absolutely nothing is happening? Is it that I'm putting the key in the ignition, turning it on, and the lights are trying to come on and nothing's happening? Is it I'm putting the key in the ignition, the lights are dim but they're on, and the car just goes clunk, like it sounds like a dead battery? We have to really use all the senses. How does the key feel when you put it in the ignition? What does the rotation of the key feel like in the ignition? Does the radio come on? Punch the radio button and see if the radio comes on. Do the lights come on? All kinds of crazy things can be going on and cause this. It could be a bad ignition switch. It could be a bad battery. It could be a low battery. It could be a blown fuse. It could be all kinds of stuff. You could have multiple issues causing something exactly like this. So we have to kind of think outside of what exactly we're seeing. We're seeing the car not start, and we're seeing the lights not come on. What else is happening? Do the windows work? Depending on what kind of vehicle this is, which Sean didn't mention, we can turn the lights on at any time. You can hit the brake lights, see if the brake lights work. Turn the hazards on. Do the hazards work? Get the battery tested. If you have any kind of test equipment like a multimeter, you can put that on, a voltmeter, and see what your battery voltage is. But you got to start somewhere. Otherwise, you're towing it to the professionals to get them to look at it. And doing these little weird things like turning the lights on and see if they come on at all, turning the hazards on, seeing if they come out at all, will kind of point you in a certain direction. Now, just because the hazards come on doesn't mean you have enough battery voltage to actually start the car. But if your hazards come on, I would think that the lights on the dash would also come on when you turn the key. And you could have something as simple as a bad ignition switch where it's never seeing you rotate the key. So start with that stuff. Again, let me know what you find, and we can report back to everybody else on what it was. Again, if you're interested in helping me out on that forum thing, that'd be awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. A lot of good questions today. Don't forget, if you want a question answered on a show like this, to email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. And please put question for Charles in the subject so that I can filter it out and it doesn't get stuck in the spam folder. If you like the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget, you can subscribe on YouTube or on the blog, humblemechanic.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, humblemechanic.com, and of course on YouTube. And hey, don't forget to check out the folks at PowerProbe, who are super awesome, and I will be putting one of their stickers probably right here, just as soon as I'm done. Sorry, founders, I'm going to cover you up a little bit. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.